On Maundy Thursday, Jesus changed the Passover meal into the Eucharistic meal, the Old Commandment into the New Commandment, and the rabbinic way of priesthood into a servant way of priesthood. Dearly beloved in Jesus Christ, welcome to the reflections of Maundy Thursday 2023. At the very outset, let me call the Maundy Thursday as a transforming Thursday, because Jesus made three important transformations from already old and existing way of thinking to a new and existential way of thinking. The first one, Jesus transformed the Passover meal into the Eucharistic meal. The Passover meal is mentioned in the book of Exodus chapter 12, and there it's clearly mentioned how the Jews should celebrate the Passover meal. And the Lord instructs all of them that they should celebrate this Passover meal in remembrance of this Exodus. Now, Jesus, being a faithful Jew, celebrates the Passover meal with his disciples before his passion and death. But Jesus changes the entire scenario and gives a new meaning to the Passover meal, changing the Passover meal into the Eucharistic meal. Instead of the animal flesh in the Passover meal, Jesus tells, "This is my body, I'm giving it for you. This is my blood, which will be shed for the remission of the sins of the entire world." That is the transformation that Jesus made during his last Passover meal, changing the Passover meal into the Eucharistic meal. Now, the Eucharistic meal is becoming a source and symbol of the salvation for the entire world every day. Secondly, Jesus changed the Old Commandment into the New Commandment. In the book of Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 18, we hear the Old Commandment. The commandment is as follows: you must love your neighbor. Now, who is a neighbor to a Jew? For a Jew, any other Jew is a neighbor. Therefore, according to the commandment of the law, the Jews are required to love only another Jew. What about all the non-Jewish people? But Jesus tells his disciples, you must love everyone just as you love yourself. That is the second transformation. And the third transformation is the rabbinic way of priesthood to a servant way of priesthood. The rabbinic way of priesthood, the disciples would go and select their master or the rabbi, whereas Jesus went to the places of the disciples and he chose his disciples. Secondly, in the rabbinic way of priesthood, the disciples would serve the master. But in the servant priesthood, which Jesus explained, he went and washed the disciples' feet. He became the servant to his own disciples and he told them, you are supposed to do the same with everyone. Thirdly, the rabbinic way of instruction. The rabbis would sit in a place and teach his disciples orally. Jesus had a different way of teaching. He taught his disciples with his way of life and his examples. He walked into the streets, went to the people, he loved them, touched them, and he told his disciples to do the same as well. Therefore, on Maundy Thursday, Jesus brought very important transformation in these three already existing way of life. That is, changing the Passover meal into Eucharistic meal, changing the rabbinic priesthood into servant priesthood, and changing the Old Commandment into the New Commandment. As we are getting into the core of the Paschal mystery, let's all meditate on these notions and get closer to God and be blessed. God bless us all.